session started, but we're going to allow our friends from DRN to set up and such. We'll start with first of all announcing that this meeting is recorded and indicating that this meeting is for public record. On the agenda today, we have three things: grant writer, Commissioner Eggleston, who's a residential LERTA, which is also Commissioner Eggleston. And then the bulk of the time will be spent by a presentation by Tom McKinley from Verifiable Recovery Network. I don't anticipate probably doing much else, as that's going to take up the full hour, I would anticipate. So unless well, let me start off by asking if there's any department updates from the staff. All right, so hearing none, I'll turn it over to Commissioner Eggleston for his two items, and then. Okay, you ready to go now?
Oh, sure.
Okay. Then we'll
There's a lot of people
first turn it over then to Tom McKinley then. Let me go around the room real quick just so you get well, I don't want to let you all speak as to who you are so that they can get a sense for the prison board members and court-related members and drug and alcohol people, just so they know who's in the room. First of all, my wife, Heidi Catherine. She's with Love in the Name of Christ, which I mentioned will be having lunch afterwards. Penny?
Penny Wexner, the county treasurer and member of the prison board.
Josh Cotton, please, Jeff.
Cody Brown, District Attorney's Office.
Matt Girl, Probation.
Ronna Tipton, Human Services.
Betsy Miller, Human Services Drug and Alcohol Director.
Phil Gilbert, Jackson.
Ed Burris, Veterans Affairs.
Linda Kreitzer, Board Administrator.
Lisa River, Director of Elections. Pam Manfey, Chief Clerk.
No me, this is Commissioner Eggleston. Would you introduce yourselves?
Robert Johnson, I do government affairs work, and I help the RN status with advocacy efforts.
Okay, I'm Tom McKinley. I represent a number of different organizations. Today I'm here with Verifiable Recovery Network. Basically, I know Ben I've been serving on the Northwest Commission Board for about 10 years now. I'm also head of our local Chamber of Commerce down in New Orleans, Pennsylvania, which is near Youngstown, Ohio. So this is a bit of a haul for us, but I always love coming up here because it's really such a nice drive to get out into the country and all that sort of thing. There's another person who may be here in time. He ended up the sort of the founder of the prior organization, which is called SACS, which is the Substance Abuse Coalition Summits, which is a nonprofit that's been around for about 18 years. And it's a guy by the name of Angelo Papo. He's a lawyer, been around for a long time. He comes up here to do cases on occasion. He has something that he had to get turned in by 4 o'clock today, so he was worried about getting here and back in time. But anyway, this comes out of a desire from Angelo to figure out a way to keep people, to get people off of drugs. Initially, it was a lot of education efforts. The cheapest way to keep people from having a drug problem is to not have the problem to begin with. But obviously, we're standing here because we have an epidemic of alcoholism and an epidemic of opioid abuse, among other things. But really, those are the two big things that we're trying to deal with right now. The SACS organization itself has been working really well with a program, particularly with alcohol offenders, keeping them out of jail by having a verifiable treatment program. And what that is basically using Vivitrol, getting somebody on Vivitrol, which is either a daily, a monthly, or you can have an implant which goes for 6 months or more, depending on what the dosages that you do. And the idea is that that's a blockade. It keeps them from getting drunk, it keeps them from getting high. But the idea was that he did this in Butler County and a number of other areas for quite a while. You go and you make a deal with the judge that says, look, we're going to put this person in this program. They can't get high. We're going to test them all the time to prove that they're not, continuing to drink or to do drugs and things like that. Keeps them from being incarcerated. It's just cheaper for everybody all the way around. And he's had really good success with that, with the Vivitrol. The problem we've had to date with the opioids has been getting somebody from on opioids, whether it's methadone, Suboxone, heroin, whatever they're doing, to getting through the detox. That's just really hard, really hard. And anybody who's been involved with this understands that these people, it doesn't matter how they got addicted, they're addicted. And asking them to stop is like asking them to stop breathing. I mean, it's the same thing. You just can't do it. It has to do with the brain chemistry and things like that. But so one of the things that has changed over the past few years is a device called the Bridge, which is an electronic device that goes behind your ear. And it can you bring up?
I'm working on pulling up the website. Yeah.
We love the technology. Anyway, the Bridge itself, it's an electronic device that came out of the post-operative pain market. that it's about the size of a hearing aid. It goes on behind your ear and has 4 electrodes. And basically you put this on, when you turn it on, it basically blocks the signals coming out of your body that tells you that you're feeling drug sick. And so it gives you 5 days of essentially like 85% relief from the really bad symptoms. And so that gets you through the worst part of the addiction, or the withdrawal. And once we get you through that, then we have a lot of other things that we can do, whether it's Clonidine or just topical types of things. You know, if you have the sweats, take a cold shower. If you have, you know, whatever you're dealing with. But you know, those first few days are the worst to get through there. So that gives us a tool that we didn't have before. And there's other tools coming down the pipe. You know, and so what we do in VRN is to try and find what technologies there are out there to try to get people past that part of it. So we're really focusing on 2 things right now: the alcohol thing with the Vivitrol and the opioids. So once we get somebody in, you know, past the detox, we can put them on Vivitrol. Now Vivitrol is a blockade. What it does is it blocks the opioid receptors from taking one of the opioids, or in this case, you know, if you're on the alcohol or whatever, it keeps you from getting high. And that's good because it does help kill off the cravings from the opioids and things like that. Not completely, but at least it keeps you from getting high, so there's that block as well. Now another component that just sort of came into our toolkit over the past few months is a program we're calling Only Need Endorphins, the ONE program. Now if you look at, you know, most of you probably know what endorphins are. Your body makes its own opiates, basically. Your endorphins are endogenous morphine. So if you look at, you know, those of us who aren't on drugs or whatever, opioids, you know, we live in a range like this. You know, if we're feeling sad or whatever, our endorphins are low, you know, we do exercise or whatever, we hug a puppy, kiss a baby, you know, do prayer or whatever, you know, we'll be up here. But we're living in a world like this. If you look at somebody who's been on opioids, basically your body stops making them because it doesn't need to anymore. And we think that the body makes more opioid receptors. We don't have all the science on that, but it just makes sense. But basically, so when somebody goes off the opioids, they're dealing with an opioid deficit this big. And so what we do is we have a program that basically teaches them and says, hey, you know, your body makes its own heroin. You know, this has always been going on. But what you need to do is to start retraining yourself to start making more, get this floor up higher, and hopefully get this down more. But the key is once the people realize that their bodies aren't making the opioids, they learn that they can do it themselves. That gives them some more hope. And it's like, oh, I can actually do this. So it makes them move a little bit further. And so the SACS group is a nonprofit that's involved in trying to do a lot of different programs. One of them is that we go out and do programs for the school districts, and then we do, like on a Friday we'll come in and we'll do like a mock trial and things like that for the schools. And on Saturdays set up to do CLE training or MLE trainings and things like that. So to sort of teach people about what this program really is, because you know that is really more outreach than anything else. VRN, the Verifiable Recovery Network, is a for-profit organization which is going out and setting up treatment centers to actually do that. And so if you want to look at it a different way, the VRN is the private pay, you know, insurance kind of thing. SACS is more dealing with the public pay, or dealing with Medicaid types of things, because there really are 2 different divisions there. And the issue with the bridge is that it's not covered by insurance yet. So, you know, we're trying to work on that. So one of the things that we're doing is just going out and getting, you know, not only grants to help make those paid for, but also grants to study, you know, how well does this really work, and how is the best way to deal with that, money to just do treatments and things like that. So, you know, I'm wearing an awful lot of hats when we're rolling this out. Now, what we're here is to talk about, you know, some of the opportunities that we can do from the county level. One of the things we're involved with right now is a program over in Butler County where we got a grant to do to install 40 bridges to folks who are dealing with homelessness and job reentry and about 3 other things on this particular grant. Because, you know, grants always have all these interesting requirements and whatever. So that's a program that's just getting started. We have 3 people that are entering into the program right now this week. So we're going to get that up and running. Another thing that we're looking at is dealing with the housing issue. When, you know, I think, you know, Human Services can, you know, attest to this. What do we do with people who are in recovery? Housing is obviously a huge need. You know, we think that the best way to deal with folks who, and a lot of them that are having these issues, is getting them out of the environment they were in, because they're going to get sucked right back into it if you don't get them out of that environment. So, you know, what do we do with that? You know, we don't have a whole lot of good answers for that yet. But you know, one of the things we're trying to do is to identify resources, whether they're state hospitals that have been closed or other, you know, resources that we can utilize to start bringing people in. But obviously dealing with the landlords and whatever, you know, they've had a lot of bad. I wouldn't go on for probably a couple hours about that. Because in Butler, we spent, you know, 6 hours in the past couple of weeks just trying to figure out where can we put these people. And again, you know, the majority of the folks that are in this got their I won't say necessarily it wasn't their fault. You know, if you look at addicts, I put them into two different piles: intentional versus unintentional. Maybe that's not the right term. That's what I use. The intentional ones got there because they were partiers and they somehow ended up getting into heroin, and then that went down the tubes. They got addicted. Unintentional got there through pain meds, and we're not really sure what this population is. You know, we have some idea how many are out there. I don't think we really realize that it's as bad as it is. I think there's a lot more out there that we just don't see. There's an awful lot of functional addicts out there that are just dealing with the day-to-day. I think anecdotally that we have more pain med addicts than we do just the general ones. One of the things that we're, right now there's been a decrease in deaths through the opioids. Narcan has helped us, but I think we're going to see in the not too distant future that that's a bubble that's going to come up because your body can only take so many Narcans and your heart gives out. So I think in some period of time we're going to start seeing a massive amount of deaths pop up. And so we're going to start seeing another outcry. People are going to go, oh, this is really a lot worse than we thought it was. And not that it's any worse, it's just that, we've had different ways of dealing with it. So the landscape of this thing keeps changing day after day after day. So, I'm just here to kind of just toss out some of the things that we're doing and that's going on in the industry kind of thing. My work with the Northwest Commission, we're looking at many grant opportunities as we can try to identify and put Megan on the task or whoever to move forward, and folks that you have here in your organizations to try and identify some state money or federal money or ARC money that we can utilize for this particular thing. And the one thing that we do know for sure is that this is not something that you fix very quickly. This is a very long-term, minimum year, most likely 3 years or more, to get somebody past, the danger point. And we also know that, there is no fully being past the danger point. There's an awful lot of recidivism. 10 years, 14 years is another number, just throughout the people's entire life. So the real key is...
You guys don't have a quick fix for drug addiction?
We don't.
I mean, I thought that's what we were here.
I can get you through detox.
I know you're joking, that is a joke.
This is a problem that's going to, outlive us for sure. I think we're just beginning to understand what this means and what we need to do. Obviously, it's going to take a lot more money than we have to solve the entire problem, but at least identifying some of the solutions that we can go for. And nobody has a magic bullet. This is one of our things here. Basically, I talked about the different things. We talked about the bridge device and preventing cravings and the remission and that sort of thing. The Vivitrol that works really well. And our protocol generally has people on it for 6 months. Some of them will go on longer than that, some of them are less than that. But if you look at, you also have to look at where people are on their road to recovery, so to speak. There's one of the counselors I work with said that there's 3 different ways of dealing with it for people who are trying to get off drugs, or off the opioids in particular. They get through the detox one way or another. In most cases, it's if they're in jail, it's going to be a cold turkey kind of thing. You chain them to a bed or lock them in a room. That's pretty much what you have to do. And it's if you ever watch somebody go through it, you know just how horrible it is. It's terrible. But once we get them detoxed, we're either putting them into a methadone clinic, they're going on Suboxone, or in some very small, more numbers, people are going on the Vivitrol kind of thing. Or they're not doing anything and they're just getting back into it. The problem with Narcan that we have is you Narcan somebody, they are instantly in as bad a withdrawal as they can possibly be. So they have only one thing in their mind, and that's to go get their next fix. They need to get that next breath. They're starved. They need that next meal. And so, the Narcan is a good news, bad news kind of thing. And the good news is they didn't die. The bad news is all they want to do is get their next fix. So, in my ideal world, if we had a way that we had enough money that we could Narcan people, bridge them right away, right in the ambulance or whatever, and just get them so they can have, with the bridge it gives you 5 days of at least not feeling bad, so you can maybe make some intelligent decisions. But getting back to the methadone, Suboxone, and Vivitrol, one of the counselors explained to me, so that methadone is kind of like the elementary school of learning about how to get off of it. Suboxone is more like the middle school, and then the Vivitrol is sort of the high school as far as the people, and I won't say seriousness, but just the level of commitment to doing the types of things. The methadone folks, in a lot of cases, tend to, that's sort of a quick fix. They're able to go day to day, but they're still, a lot of them are continuing to party. They're not as able as well as to do things as much as, say, perhaps folks that are on the Suboxone, where we're really aiming to get down to that lowest dose. The problem with the Suboxone is, you get down to that lowest dose, you're still an addict. You got to stop and go through detox. And that level of detox, well, it doesn't matter what level you're starting with, you're still going to go through a pretty significant drug stick kind of thing. And so, I've been calling the bridge kind of the Suboxone off-ramp, because that gives you at least a tool that says, You know, I talk to a lot of Suboxone folks that are just saying, I can't be drug sick for 3 weeks. You know, I can't stop this and whatever. It's like, well, it doesn't need to be 3 weeks. You know, we can plan this so that you can take, you know, do the treatments and this sort of thing. The issue with the bridge is that we need people to be off their drugs for a little while. It's either 24, 36, or 72-hour period before we get them. And the point, and there's some reasons behind that, but so Suboxone is a 72-hour kind of thing. But we get them to the point, put the bridge on, and it's when you look at the videos of these people with here, I'll try to find one for you. I meant to bring a link. You basically put this thing on, and when you flip the switch, these people within a few minutes are going from, you know, cow score of you know 28, 30 or something like that down to 7, half an hour they're down to 3. I mean, it's that dramatic. And so it's something that really, you know, gives them a tool to go, hey, I can actually deal with this. And then once they get through those, you know, the 4 or 5 days of that, the rest of the withdrawal, if you're on Suboxone, you're going to have a 10-day period. But those last few days aren't nearly as bad as the first few. So again, that gives us a toolkit to work with.
How much do those cost each?
The bridge, and then, well, the main guy who invented it, who's putting them on people in St. Louis, he's charging $3,600 for treatment. People drive from all over the place to get treated. That's not what it costs them. And so the way that we're dealing with it, when somebody comes in to us, we're going to give them a full panel blood screen to see what they're actually on, because we need to know what they're doing. You know, if they're on a whole bunch of benzodiazepines, a bunch of things, there's certain things that you can't be on. If you're on the benzos, the bridge won't help you. You know, it'll help do some of the things, but the benzos are going to block the other kinds of things, so we need to know that. So that full panel with the bridge and whatever, depending on the clinic or whatever, it's going to be around $1,200 to $2,000, depending on where this is, you know, to do the bridge portion of that. The Vivitrol portion of that, again, depends on the market kind of thing. And so we break the treatments down into detox, the first bridge, or the first Vivitrol treatment, and then the subsequent ones from there. And we're still figuring out the pricing on that, because we're trying to get better pricing for the Vivitrol folks. The nice thing about Vivitrol, and then there's also counseling, obviously, that goes along with this. They only need endorphins as part of it, and then all the other counseling that goes along with this. One of the things I want to say about counseling is that we realize that treating the addict is just part of the problem, because a general addict, you know, if the addict has this much counseling that the addict needs, there's significant other space around them, whether it's family, friends, or whatever, they're going to need 5 times that or more. And so the counseling needs are just tremendous for these whole types of things. In order for this to work, we know that if we don't offer counseling with this, it's not going to work. If we just, you know, so one of the things that we run into is that, you know, do we really accept people in the program knowing that they're not going to make it? You know, so we have a heavy-duty assessment program that we do with folks initially to go through. It's like 120 questions, and it sort of tries to give us a feel for whether or not they're going to be able to be successful on this. And the idea is to say, you know, don't waste your time or money on this. You may, I'll give you an example. We had a young lady that came in a few weeks ago. She's 36, she'd been an addict since she was 13, had gone through all kinds of different programs, and like she had implantable Vivitrol. She got home from the hospital. She went to Maryland to get this put in, got home, dug the implant out. Her worst part was she was in withdrawal. She had gotten shot. She was on the table in the ER. Basically ended up jumping off the table, ran out the room, down the hall, started to go, she got outside, was naked because her stuff had fallen off, had an IV hanging out of her. And her father's just going on saying, you know, I need you to do this, I need you to help us. And, you know, we talked to her, and she's like, I just like to get high. You know, I like this. So we knew that this was not worth doing. The dad really wanted us to do this. It was almost a case of that this was his last, you know, the last thing that he was going to try. And the really sad thing about this was that her older brother had died a few years prior to testicular cancer. And so here was dad that, you know, had buried her son. He was going to end up burying her. And, you know, there's this, I don't know what we can do with her. And it's just really sad because we see this every day. You see it every day. And so, you know, do we have the perfect answer? No, at least we're, you know, the SACS organization spends its time trying to identify whatever's out there. If something comes along better than the bridge, that's what we're going to push. There's a couple of interesting drug possibilities that look like they may work for helping through the detox. That's great. The program, we call our program the TA-MAT, Total Abstinence Medicine Assisted Treatment. Now, what does total abstinence mean? What that means is that when you're on the Vivitrol, that's not a narcotic. So when you're on, obviously, when you're on methadone and you're on Suboxone, you're going to test positive for opioids because they're opioids. You can't get your DOT license. There's a lot of things you can't do. When you're on the Vivitrol, that's not the case. So you're going to be able to re-enter, if you're a truck driver, you're on this treatment, you're going to be able to go back to work. And a lot of other groups that can't work because they're going to test positive, that helps us get past that particular thing. So, part of our discussions are talking with some of the industry folks to say, or the trucking industry or the larger employers around, it's like, here's something that can help you with some of these employees, assuming that they're motivated to stay in the program and move forward. And we've seen a lot of the discussions, again, going back to the Suboxone folks and to a lesser degree some of the methadone folks, they really want to get out of the program. They're just afraid that last step. So that, I think, helps that particular thing. Probably get tired watching this guy ride his bike down there. There's a couple of videos that I would show. They're kind of long, and we have one that talks about the endorphins, about how that works, and how the Vivitrol works, all that sort of stuff. But I think you can kind of get the idea that it does just do its thing. And they don't think the links are in this particular.
Do they have a local doctor that would handle that?
The way this would work is, the way that we're working is that we're identifying clinics that we're trying to set up in the different regions, and then we train them. They need to get special training for the bridge and for the Vivitrol and things like that. But we get them up to speed on what our protocol is. We have a complete package that we have to get the folks up and running.
Because we have a few doctors, I think. Do you know who they are?
We have 2 Vivitrol providers.
Yeah, and so what we want to do is to sit down and see who's doing what and try to see if we can bring the programs in. And I think one of the discussions we had was looking at what do we do to not incarcerate people? What do we do to have a better program so that they're not having to go spend time in jail? That's expensive. And we say $75 a day. I think the number, if we really dug into it's probably higher than that, and we add in some other costs. But if there's other options that we have to do that, we'll be talking about that in more detail a little later. There are other ways to deal with people rather than just throwing them in jail.
Do you guys, are you the ones who administer, do you have a program in Armstrong County?
We don't.
You
There are
don't?
some other folks who have.
Okay, I'm just aware of I've had conversations with the commissioners on Armstrong because they've had a lot of luck with this. Do you have statistics or any kind of statistical information that kind of justifies the utilization of it?
We have a lot on the Vivitrol and the counseling, things like that. The bridge, because it's so new, we're starting to get data there. And we're going for we want to go out and get another controlled study put into place.
I mean, I realize it's challenging because people come in and out, everybody gathers data differently, but
That's the gathering the data differently is something we're trying to address because a lot of people are doing things and the state has approved grant money for the bridge because they believe that it does work. But unless the people do it properly, I mean, there's a reason we need them to be off drugs for a period of time before we put the bridge on. And there's protocols after they have the bridge on to make sure that it continues to work. It's not something you just slap on and just walk away. Just like anything else, you need to manage it. And so the training hasn't been there for some of the folks that have been utilizing this. So that's something that we're trying to get better data out there, better protocols in place for anybody who wants to do this. And because it's being used in different areas by different types of doctors and providers, there's mixed events, mixed data going back.
So do you guys have like boilerplate policy proposals that you make with the treatment program and how it would be administered?
Yeah. We have our, basically sits in our PA-MAT protocol.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're on opioids and like say if you're coming in as a Suboxone off-ramp, there's a particular way that we want that to happen. And it has to do with, because most of these people are trying to stay employed. And so they need, when they're on the bridge, generally they'll be feeling good enough they can go back to work. But there's going to be that period of 72 hours of Suboxone where they're going to need to be off the Suboxone. So they're going to be ramping up into their withdrawal. But once we get the bridge on, they're going to ramp back down again. So they have 5 days. And then after that, we try to set it up so that whatever other symptoms they have, we can deal with whatever, whether it needs to be some over-the-counter medicines or whatever.
So how do these people get into the program for the bridge? They're usually not criminals then? They're usually on treatment somewhere and they're asking
We're working on that.
for the grants that you have?
Okay, so for example, in Butler, this particular group there's a specific set of criteria that they have to be. They have to be experiencing some level of homelessness, although we have a pretty light definition on that, which works really well for us. They need to be on a path for workforce re-entry or at least not falling out of the workforce. They need to be they need to have opioid use disorder, and there's one other criteria, whatever. Once they fit into that, then they can get referred into us. And so in this case, the butler, the intake counselor says, okay, you're a candidate for this, go talk to these people. And then we evaluate them and make sure that they're, do the blood test, see what they have going on. Is this something that's really worthwhile for them? And if the answer is yes, then we bridge them and put them through the program. And then this is just getting started. We got the grant. The grant started a few months ago. Just ramping grants up takes a while. And all the folks across the state that are dealing with this particular grant are having the same issues. It's finding people to help administer it, and the level of expertise that we need. It's hard to find people and that sort of thing. But so, and again, public versus private kind of thing. When we have the private, the clinics that are there, that will be, whether it's Uncle Bob says, hey, little Billy's an addict, we think that he is going to be good for this, so they'll come in and they'll put him into there. On the private to the public pay side of things, we're still trying to work out how that works best. It's just the bridge that needs paid for, the bridge administration. Everything else can be if they're available, if they're on Medicaid, then that would pay for the Vivitrol and the counseling after that. So that part's taken care of. So on the municipal side of things, that's what we're working on here. How do we figure out ways to get a program in place to get some money for the bridging, get that going? And I think I know there's money out there to do that. We just need to sit down and look at a particular way to do it. And the other thing is, just finding the locations, if we're doing some housing types of things. If we're bringing people into the program, some of them may need housing. If we can have something to do that, to move forward, that's one of the things.
Yeah, we do have a lot of housing in place, I think, through Bob Rabel has
Can I send some
quite
people
a
up?
few.
But it's a real challenge. We don't have any
Huge challenge.
certified halfway houses. We don't have any, transitional housing is probably the biggest need that we have across the board.
I think we do have transitional housing.
We do.
There's several.
We do, but it's full almost all the time, and I'm sure.
It's full, it's falling apart, there's criteria, they can't have a record, certain type of record,
Well, didn't Bob, wasn't he just, at the last CJAB meeting, he just told there were two more.
It's not
facilities.
transitional housing.
That's what he said.
Those are permanent housing.
Those are permanent housing. The two new homes he's
He
acquired.
said they were transitional.
Mhm. The transitional homes we have are on the state hospital grounds.
So we know that there's room for improvement there. What could a partnership between your organization, the courts, and the county look like?
I think there's, and what Shangela was there, is he could talk about more of the legal side of this, but my understanding is that, first and foremost, there's a way to, we have some pleadings and things like that that we can make available that says, hey, if we want to try to keep this person from being incarcerated, this is a legal document that we entered in with the sentencing, which says, okay, I agree to go through this program, I agree to go through the testing, and not, it's like a 10-page document, all the stuff that they're not going to do and they are going to do. And then basically, assuming that this person is detoxed at that point, we get them on the Vivitrol right away, and then they're in the program. And what we're using, the Vivitrol we're using is a month-to-month injectable. And so basically it goes into your glutes, and it's like toothpaste, but it's because it takes that long to go away or whatever, but it really does work. Now, one of the things that a lot of people, when they go on Vivitrol, they need to be told, we do counseling before we even start people to let them know what they're getting into, because again, this isn't a magic bullet, but it helps a lot. The issue with the Vivitrol is because it's a blockade, it blocks everything. Your endorphins, it blocks everything. So people, a lot of them feel flat, like they're not emotional, they're not able to ride up and down on their emotional roller coaster like we normally do on a day-to-day basis. They need to know that. Not everybody experiences that. There's a subset of folks, 30–40% of them, they get on it and they really feel like, I don't have these cravings anymore, at least not the level that I did. I'm past my withdrawal, I don't have the level of cravings. Now, I'm not sure if that's real or just imagined kind of thing, is it a placebo? These people really see that. The rest of them tend to be on the flat side, saying that, I don't feel happy, I don't feel a lot of things that, and so that's where only the endorphins thing comes in. Endorphins, if you do it really heavy duty, that can come in and knock off some of the Vivitrol so that you can get bumps and things like that. But what we tell the folks is that, this is a temporary thing. Okay, you've been on opioids for the last 12 years, okay, so there's going to be a period of time where you got to retrain your body chemistry to move forward. And that's really what it is, retraining your body chemistry.
When we've talked about this, in different settings, like Dr. Tutel is one of the folks that does Vivitrol locally, is that there has to be a really strong treatment component to go along with it, and especially if the courts are involved, that's very helpful, because the way he made it sound was that it was a case-by-case basis, because a person's commitment to recovery and interest in it generally will affect that. It's a tool in the toolbox, but it's not a...
It's not the, yeah, it's not.
Because I remember us bringing that up and discussing with it at length, because like I said, we had talked with the commissioners in Armstrong County, and they have had really good luck, at least from their perspective, working with this, and when we brought it to like Dr. Patel and some of the other ones, they were like, and I think he had just started his program within the past year, you would say, or 2 years, something like that. And that was kind of the thing, was also having a discussion about, okay, what other tools do you bring to bear on the situation to help?
And so, I'll just say in a couple ways. Absolutely, it's just a tool. One of the key items that we look for is that they have a support system in place that's going to help them get through there. It's pretty much something you can't necessarily do on your own. A lot of the folks that are right at the edge of the Suboxone, a lot of those have a lot of the tools already. They've gotten to that point in there, so that's a better candidate than just somebody off the street, so to speak. But we need to see somebody that has a very strong family member, a very strong mentor, who's going to come in and really watch them. Because when they're on the bridge, we need to make sure they're not taking other drugs. But before they're on the bridge, we need to make sure that they're being watched, and they're, and a lot of people just don't have that resolve to get there. So that's where we go to the, I call it the DUI hotel or whatever like that, where facilities that are somewhat locked down, so that we can, there's some people who really need to lock down during that period of time to make sure that they get through it. And once somebody's on Vivitrol, they can go do whatever they want. They can kill themselves by taking too much, they're just not going to get high. So there's, again, it's looking at what this particular person needs. And then just all the counseling wrapped around that. And, given the type of addict it is, everybody's got secondary and third, diagnosis. None of us are not crazy, I guess, but, some of the folks are coming in with a lot more issues to deal with than others. So, and if I had to say anything about this, we can talk all we want about bridges and Vivitrol and these kind of things, but if we don't come up with ways to have better counseling available to the population at large, a lot of this stuff's just not going to really get fixed. And I don't know how we solve that problem.
Just to go along with that, I would say that, people talk about the cost, overall, that's the first thing everybody brings up, is how much is it going to cost and everything. And the thing that we constantly try to convey to everybody is the cost of having someone incarcerated in the jail to the county is greater than probably any other cost that they're going to have outside that jail. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that when they're in the county jail, we foot the entire bill, for everything. There's no Medicaid, there's no any other funding that I'm aware of. And if we can get them out and get them treatment and get them treated and dealing with that, for the county, for us, on our end, I know all dollars, tax dollars are tax dollars one way or the other, but, the cost of the county immediately, it's gonna be cheaper,
Yeah, let me just add on a little, let me try to address the last question of what Tom said. We have an assessment of what we would give to everybody. We've got an assessment for every candidate. What a partnership could look like would be, you've got somebody who maybe has been arrested for something. We identified it, really they have an addiction problem more than a criminal justice problem. And then instead of putting them into the prison, they take our assessment, and then we begin to work with them through the 3-step process that Tom described. And then basically you're keeping them out of the prison. That's your partnership with the county and the courts. We're working with them, trying to get them back into functional society on a day-to-day basis. That might be more of a partnership type of thing. And you could set up criteria, which we could set up for you, and I'm sure you've got some criteria you would require for that. But we think we can help you through that process.
Well, and I think that it should be made clear that we're talking about non-violent drug addicts. We're not talking about people that need to be in jail, or that everybody kind of agrees that they need to be in jail. The goal is to try to find other tools to treat people that are treatable
Right.
in order to prevent.
Now, Allegheny County, like where I'm from, maybe is a bad example of this, but, you know, they, in terms of numbers, but they have like, I mean, they talked about, in fact, about 17 or 1,800 inmates in the Allegheny County jail who probably shouldn't be there. They have really addiction problems. Obviously, those numbers would be low up here, the percentages are probably the same, depending on what you've got in your county system at this point. You probably still have probably a significant number of folks who we could potentially work with.
You know, Ben hears me say this all the time about data. I'm a data junkie from the standpoint that, you know, there's all this data that's out there that we aren't really doing much with, and we don't know a lot about the addict problem. As far as how many people, you know, we're looking at the cost kind of thing. You know, we don't really know what the opportunity cost is of not treating these people, and we can make some stabs at that or whatever. You know, what does it really cost for us to have these addicts out there? You know, they may be functional at this point. Is that going to turn into another problem down the road? You know, I look at this as, you know, trying to catch people on the way down kind of thing. We hit them before they hit the bottom where they really start costing society a lot more money. You know, the $75 a day, you know, I think it's probably closer to $125 a day or something like that when you add in all the numbers. But I think having data like that is data that we need to have so that we can have a really intelligent conversation, so we have numbers to say this is apples to apples kind of thing, as opposed to, well, this is $75 a day, but it's going to cost you $1,000 if we don't do this with this person or something like that. We just don't have all the data that we need, and I think that's something that I would like to go to the Northwest Commission or somebody to say, maybe to ARC, and say, look, you know, we need to put some intelligent minds on this to really understand what is the true cost to society of this. And I know there's quite a bit of stuff that's been done already. Maybe it's there, I just haven't found it yet. But you know, that helps us work more intelligently towards the problem. And again, you know, identifying the non-violent versus the, you know, people should be in jail versus the people who shouldn't be. Where do you draw the line on that? I mean, you know, there's arguments, you know, pro and con. There's a lot of people that I talk to. They say, you know, let these people die, let them rot. You know, it's kind of like I tend towards the, you know, that every soul's worth trying to save, you know, kind of thing. But there are some people who we just can't fix. And, you know, they need to be in jail, unfortunately. But I think a lot of the folks from the drug standpoint, you know, when you look, one of the questions I've asked a number of the counselors is, you know, is there a difference, the addicts, about how they, you know, when you're dealing with them, does it matter how they got there? You know, was it intentional versus unintentional? And I being the Pollyanna that I am thinking that somebody got there through painkillers, you know, they have a lot less issues to deal with at the end of the day than the folks that maybe got there because they were partying and ended up taking heroin. And most of the counselors have told me to a person that when somebody's at the bottom, they're at the bottom, and they all have the same level of problems to deal with. You just have to sort it out the same way. Hopefully, you know, you have bins of people that the larger bin has less problems than the smaller bin, and you're going to have to pour more money into this pile over here. But again, you know, we're still trying to identify what the acceptable level of treatment is for these types of things. But we know a lot more now than we did a few years ago, and that is that, you know, you absolutely have to do counseling with this stuff, or it's not going to work. And it's long term. You know, throwing somebody in for a 30-day treatment and tossing them on the street, that is absolutely a waste of money. You might as well just light that on fire. Yes.
I hear you saying that counseling is the most important foundational aspect
absolutely.
of all of this, and I 100% agree with you. Do you have in-house counselors, or do you subcontract that, or how do you handle that?
What we do, and again, our program is just getting started here, so we're still, but what we're doing for the regular counseling types of stuff, you know, that's just general, you know, whether it's DNA counseling, things like that. That's, you know, this person has these 3 diagnoses, we need to deal with that. You only need endorphins kind of thing. We have a treatment program. This is based on a book called Hope is Dope, written by a guy by the name of Steve Troy. He's out of Wexford, Pennsylvania, down in Pittsburgh. And this has been, you know, other people have hit on this. This isn't necessarily new, but what he did was he realized that, you know, what he likes to say is we don't have a drug problem, we have an endorphin opportunity. And the idea is that once people understand that, you know, and he's had like tens of thousands of people go through his program, and this really works. Is these people realize that, you know, I want to get back to here, I don't want to be here anymore, and they're doing this. And so what we did is we had him rewrite his book, Hope is Dope. We call it Only Need Endorphins, and we're focusing on our program, you know, getting him detox and getting him on the Vivitrol and whatever. Now, the bridge is just one of the tools there. You know, in a lot of cases, particularly when we're dealing with judicial folks, they're detoxed. You know, they're in prison. Hopefully, they're detoxed while they're in prison. Even though that can be questionable sometimes. But you know, we get somebody, you know, if we can get them so that they're clean at that point, if they are nonviolent and if they can fit into the program, and we think we can put them through that, then that's a really good candidate. And so that's one population. And in particular, if we're able to identify some housing, we can do some, again, I call it the DUI hotel, because there's some things we can do with the people we have to deal with on the DUI side of things for the limited car incarceration. But we need a limited lockdown facility to do with some of these folks. And perhaps these people they graduate into there, we get them into Vivitrol, get them into counseling right then and there, and then move them out somewhere else, and maybe back into their regular living conditions or whatever, depending on where they're coming from. Because again, so many of these folks got there, not necessarily because they were living in slums or whatever. I think that's probably less of a problem here than it is, say, in downtown Pittsburgh, where you have so many people packed into so much of an area. Although, the rural areas, there's obviously the issues that we have with, all the depression and the unemployment, all that sort of stuff here. But I think a lot of the addicts really want to get off the hamster wheel. It's just that getting that step, whether it's Suboxone or whatever. And I don't know what the numbers of those are, the percentages. Being a data junkie, it drives me crazy not having these numbers. Because we have some data we're trying to pull together. We don't really know what the population of addicts is. We can make some anecdotal guesses about how many pills were sold and whatever. I don't think I saw the article in the Pittsburgh Post, Post-Gazette, not Pittsburgh, Washington Post or whatever. It was last Friday it came out. Basically, they took all the data from 2006 to 2012 about where all the pills were sold in every county in the United States, and they have these maps by year. And it's pretty interesting to see how this stuff grew and where it was happening and all that sort of thing. But you can map that right back to how heroin was being sold, black tar, how that came in. Have you guys read Dreamland at all? Anybody in here? That's a book you need to read. Dreamland is about how the black tar heroin epidemic got into the United States. And basically, the black tar followed all the pill mills. And it's a fascinating read. They basically delivered like pizza deliveries. I mean, their business model was second to none. It was this one cartel that came from this one little town in Mexico. And they basically were responsible for almost the entire heroin epidemic in the United States. I highly recommend reading it. It will blow your mind at how big pharma cost is. It explains exactly how the whole thing happened.
What was it again?
Dreamland. I forget the guy's name. It's if you do audiobooks, that's another way to do it. Since we drive a lot, audiobooks are great. But it's worth it. It sets the stage for what we're dealing with. When you realize how big pharma was so much responsible behind all this, we're starting to see some court cases and things like that, but it's so much worse than you really realize, and about how they went out of their way to hide the fact that this stuff was addictive. And they really were saying, oh no, this OxyContin, it's not, this is great because it's not addictive. Guess what? Wrong.
Just follow up on your question, that initial assessment is really important that we give to that patient/client, and then the ongoing counseling right from there. That Tom has been saying, can't emphasize that enough. And then also I want to emphasize the second bullet up there, total abstinence. It's kind of where we're really going with our program. We've got a lot of methadone out there, a lot of Suboxone out there. We really are pursuing a total abstinence-based program using medical assistance. We can't highlight that enough. Probably makes us a little bit different than the other programs that are out there.
And it really does open so many more opportunities for those folks for employment again, because a lot of them are testing positive when they're on, and they, even if a doctor gives a script to somebody, if they're looking to get their DOT license, whatever, they can't. It's prescribed, you can't do it. And that's a lot of people that can't be truck drivers, for example.
Do you work with any courts that have treatment courts?
Yes. I don't personally, but Angela does, who's not here.
Yes. And there are some out there across all of Western PA.
Yeah, that's
We
true.
see some of that.
And so, this is obviously something that we could fit into that. And so, and again, as we're getting started with this, discussions like this are going to move us into this. And I think by finding what works in one county, one of the things that I've learned by working with the Northwest Commission, our 8-county local development district here, is that we're finding that doing programs across the entire region really helps, not only from a funding standpoint, but from just getting more done more efficiently with the money that we can get. And the fact that the ARC is so interested, Appalachian Resource Commission is so interested in solving, the workforce reentry, the drug opioid problem, and rural broadband. Now, I say that tongue in cheek, but the broadband issue or connectivity issue that we have really fits into this, because when we get back to the counseling part of this, a lot of the counseling is going to be done online. group counseling. We're finding that people are self-selecting groups, particularly in the only need endorphins. The only need endorphins works, we do a once a month face-to-face, but then the rest of it is group counseling. These people love it. And these people get involved and they stay involved for years and years and years because it's just so much, they realize that it really helps. But particularly when we get out into regions like this, connectivity is a real problem. We need to have connectivity here. So when I go to meetings at the ARC and say, you guys want rural broadband and you want to solve the opioid crisis, those two go hand in hand. Now, let's talk about the connectivity issues we have in this area. Everybody thinks about internet. They think a little bit about cellular and stuff like that. We hear about 5G. We won't see 5G here for, I don't think, in my lifetime. And maybe not that long. But anyway, the point is that if you look at the connectivity that we have now, it's actually getting worse as time goes on, not better. Everybody says, well, somebody can dial into AOL or something like that. And the answer is no, you can't. And try to get a dial tone in most of these places around here. You can't even get Verizon to give you a phone line. You just can't. So there's a lot of these people, that they're dependent on, the only option they have is their cell phone. And if you're on, 2G or even 3G, you can't do anything. These things, my background is in wireless data, by the way, so we're familiar with all that. So these things didn't take off until we actually had when 3G came out, we actually had some bandwidth. That's when all these apps really kicked in. Nothing happened before because we didn't have the connectivity. If you don't have at least 3G, which a lot of these areas around here don't, when you get further out, you're not connected. So we're working on applications that go behind this thing, that we're going to have online availability counseling at the text level. Because at least you can text back and forth pretty much from anywhere as long as you have any kind of signal. You stand up on the hill like this. But that's the level of stuff that we're dealing with. And I feel like on the broadband stuff is, I think that the airborne resources is what's really going to save us over the next few years, whether it's the balloons or the satellites, the lower satellites that they're putting up there, stuff like that. In a few years, we're going to finally have that. The problem we have here, though, is you have a lot of places that can't see the sky at night or in the daytime. You need to have antennas above the trees. So that's another issue we're working with. Some engineering on that,
Just a little bit.
yeah. But it's, but again, there's so many different pieces to this puzzle that need to be dealt with. And any other questions? I can go on for hours.
Personally, I'm willing to explore some sort of an option where the county could sort of offset some of our upfront, I suppose, some of our resources that we would be spending on jail instead of divert to something like this, if that's something the courts would be interested in. So I don't think we need to leave this in the courts and probation court. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, this is along the lines of the stuff that we've talked about previously with like the stepping up thing, and I know Ron was very interested in that, or has gotten more interested in it now. I think that, through CJAB and through that, those would be the two places to have a conversation about utilizing a program like this to a larger degree. I think that one of the things that we've talked about too is having like more comprehensive needs assessment of like what we legitimately need in the jail. We could, we rely a lot on, Department of Human Services and the vendors and different people kind of telling, well, we could do this, or we should do this, or we should try this, and we don't really have a lot of data to, say one way or the other what process we would implement. I mean, am I wrong in saying that?
Not entirely, no.
You can say yes.
No, I think we have some more exploration to do.
Yeah, because we've talked about
Yeah,
expanding services in the jail and then the transition from jail to, for me, the biggest challenge that we have is the transition from jail to the community, like that span of time after you get out of jail. Because most of the people, and that's where like the Vivitrol program and stuff like that come into play, because when they get out of jail, there's a span of time where I'm gonna do it different this time, and that lasts about a week, like maybe two, and then it's like, God, I'm bored. What do I do? Well, I should, Steve called. I'm gonna go hang out with him, and then bam, they're right. I mean, like literally, and then sometimes if you go over there, they'll be back in 2 weeks. Like you'll be sitting there going, wait, you left? Like, no, I'm back. And so, to me, like a program like this, like in the transition from jail, and it also goes with the whole transitional housing bit, is trying to get them in an environment for a period of time where they're drug and alcohol free and they have good support so they can be successful long enough that they get it completely out of their system. You know, because, but that, I don't know, I mean, that's just my perspective on it from talking to people, my own experience.
Linda, do you think that the best course of action then would be to have a conversation about this at CJAB?
I think with judges and with the district attorney, probation, I think that would be more.
Okay, so we should set up something separate. Okay. Matt, did you have anything?
That sounds good to me.
Cody?
I agree with that.
You're good, Norman? Good. Dan? Good. All right, well, thank you very much for your presentation. Is there anything else?
Here's
you want?
some- we got a few more slides there.
I'm gonna have a talk.
Any other questions? Thanks everybody for
Thank you
putting
for your
up
time.
with me.
Appreciate it.
Well, I love coming up here. It's nice to get out. Although I live in New Wilmington, which is a very small Amish town, so it's.
Thank you very much.
Oh,
Appreciate it.
nice meeting you. Here's a little background around the overall status thing as well.
Either way. All right, well, the remaining two items on the agenda are grant writer and residential LERTA. We would not be offended if you all left at this point. You are more than welcome to stay.
If you're gonna escape, do it
But if
now.
you're gonna escape, yeah, now would be the time.
Certainly, we will help you try to identify some plans too. This is something that will help. We'll help you identify some opportunities for.
Awesome. Good.
So we have to do later?
Yeah, Heidi's gonna take you down.
Okay.
Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you. That's it.
All right, you're up.
So the main thing is this whole LERTA bit. We're finally at a point where we're ready to kind of move forward as a group. There's still some townships that are interested in coming on board, but we're not going to. We're going to let them. We'll get a second batch, I guess, is what I'm saying. So we've set a date for our public hearing, or I shouldn't say we've set a date, I'm asking to set a date or to get an official, like everybody's comfortable with it. And by everybody, I mean at least you and me. Which is the 28th of August at 12 p.m., which would be our new meeting. And we just open it up and have the public hearing. And that's after.
Public hearing beforehand, then open up commission.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
That'll be fine.
And that's after all of the other dates. So right now we have Glade Township, Limestone, Pleasant, Sheffield, Conowongo, Cherry Grove, Clarendon, Tidioute, Youngsville Borough, and then the city of Warren's already passed their ordinance. So they'd be tacked on. So we've got 10 total. And if you look at the map and then just look at the names, I think that represents a bulk of the population. A lot of the more rural townships I've had to do, I've tried to make it to, and if I haven't, I will in the future make it to all of their township meetings in order to try to convince them to come on board. Many of the concerns that I've heard from them is that there's so few people and there's so little development, they don't see what's the point for them, and that in a bigger township, or bigger, or in the city, it makes sense. And so I'm trying to tell them that it's just a tool in the toolbox, and that it's better to have it, you know, and not have it utilized than to not have it when it could, you know, and then have other places benefit from it. So everybody that's on the list, to my knowledge, is passing the 5-year 100% in both commercial and residential. So so we should be good to go. And then I sent a draft ordinance to you, to Commissioner Morrison, to Nathaniel Schmidt, and everybody else to look at, because basically, once everybody's comfortable with the August 28th, we're gonna run the ad tomorrow, Wednesday. It'll be Wednesday probably.
That's enough time.
Yeah.
No, it'll go in Friday, but I have to
Oh,
get it
okay.
to paper by Wednesday.
Oh, okay.
before-
So yeah, Friday. Yeah. So we've looked at all of the we've looked at the calendar, and that should be enough time for everybody.
Okay, then I'm fine with it.
Were there any townships that were a hard no?
The only hard no was Deerfield, and
Did it say what?
I haven't. All I've heard was that somebody said that all I've heard is that somebody said that they just weren't interested in it, that they didn't need it. So I haven't had a chance to talk to them individually. They're on my schedule to go meet, so when we go talk to them. Mead wasn't a hard no. They were going to take more time to look at it, but I think that they felt critical of it. So we'll see. I still think that there's a chance that Mead will come on board. I'm not really sure about Deerfield. From what I've seen is when I go to the townships and talk to them, usually when they're a hard no or they're having an issue with it, they didn't understand what it was, and so they kind of maybe had mixed feelings about it. And then once it was explained, they were like, oh, okay, well that's fine. So I think Watson will eventually come on board. I feel pretty good about that. Elk has expressed an interest. I just haven't gotten a public date for them yet. I think that we'll eventually have the entire eastern half of the county. I've been to Spring Creek. I haven't been to Pittsfield yet. I went to Broken Straw. Went to Bear Lake. Yeah, so I have to hit those up, and usually when I do it in person, it helps. So.
What about the Corey School District?
Yeah, no, Columbus and Spring Creek are challenged because of the Corey School District. I've had a call that I have to return to them to talk about it.
I've met with them, and the general sense was that they didn't want to offer something that the other counties weren't also doing. They didn't want to give Spring Creek and Columbus unfair advantage. And from my perspective, any municipality can do this. I mean, Erie County is the one that we're modeling our example off of, so I didn't understand that argument.
But I'm not sure. I think the question is does Corey borough? Is there a borough?
It's a city.
Is it a city?
In name.
Yeah. It is. The city of Corey and those surrounding areas may not have adopted their commercial and residential LERTA that's in some of the municipalities surrounding the city area.
It's not our fault,
Oh, it isn't. No, you're right. But yeah, so there'll be some more work there. One anecdote is that when I went to Spring Creek, I can't remember if they brought this up in Columbus or not, but they wanted us to figure out a way that they could get into the Warren County School District. Because their taxes are so high. And I was like, you want to get into the Warren County School District? And they were pretty adamant about it, that the Erie County taxes, that they were too high, and that they thought they would get a break at Warren. So I'm assuming that, I don't know what the situation is with Southwest, because they're in the Titusville School District, so ask them. But I keep meaning to follow up with Representative Rapp to see if she would want to work with us to champion getting them into the school district. I will take your silence as a non-committal. I don't know how that would even work out, because, I mean, I would assume that Warren County would want to take them, because that would be more taxes, but I don't know if that would be more work for them, because they'd have to bus those people to, I mean, I don't even know how it would work. I mean, because my understanding was it was set up that way because they felt like Columbus and Spring were too far away.
Correct.
Yeah, so I don't know. It'd probably help, I suppose it would help Eisenhower's case, because the
Just
school,
go to Youngsville.
yeah, or Youngsville. They get, however, how many kids are in Spring Creek and Columbus? A few dozen on the side. I don't know, anyway.
Honestly, Spring Creek is like a hefty percentage homeschool,
Yeah.
because we don't really want to travel all the way.
No. So that's that. Do you have any questions?
Nope, that sounds good.
Does anybody have any questions?
Jeff, did you say what side Youngsville went with, which way Youngsville Borough went?
Youngsville Borough's on board. Their date is scheduled for August 12th. I'll, and Josh, you can have copies of this. I have copies here. Yeah, so that'll be good.
Okay, Grant.
You guys added this to the schedule, or the
Oh, I'm
agenda.
sorry. Yeah.
So I think the idea was to have a conversation about the money that we allocated for a marketing position.
Yes, George Grant.
I haven't written anything up for
Neither
that.
did I, I'm sorry, I forgot. We put that on at the Pine Grove Township Town Hall meeting.
Yep.
Okay, so this is not a proposal we're bringing today.
Well, I mean, I don't mind having a general discussion about it.
But I mean, I think we should come up with a proposal. I apologize, I forgot how to. So let's just kind of keep it in the old business until we.
Well, let's put it this way. I mean, the whole idea is to contract, is to be able to contract with grant writers, right?
Right.
And reallocate that money, because I'm not sure how the marketing position is going to shake out at this point. We've now had multiple meetings where people have said, well, you know, we need more grant services, and we know that. So.
Right.
Okay, we'll throw something together for the next work.
So is the intent to contract with grant writers versus having a grant writer?
I think I would prefer to go 1099 route, because it could depend on the type of grant as to who you contract. There are people with certain subject matter expertise that could be beneficial, or contacts that could be beneficial. Plus, rather than paying for that overhead, I'd rather have it almost be a pay-for-performance situation where we know we want to go after this grant, we've identified it, we're allocating this amount of money towards writing that grant, rather than just kind of, hire someone part-time.
There'd also be an element of having them bring stuff to the table, I think.
Sure.
But I think that I agree with Commissioner Caffrell that we would start out on some kind of contractual basis, and then potentially, like if the circumstances were right, we could bring somebody on board. You know, it would depend on who it was and how they work.
Well, it wouldn't necessarily need to be one person if it was 1099.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Have you got a sense from other counties how they approach it?
Other counties seem to have multiple ways of handling it. There are grant writing departments in some of the bigger counties with multiple employees. I don't think that would probably be justified here, but and then there's contracted. I've seen that too.
Yeah, there's just so much of the state funding now is grant related that without having grant resources, you lose a lot. You know, what we have here is we have a lot of staff that do all of the grant writing themselves, and it's really a lot of work. You know, the easy one that I always point to is Carl McKee down in adult probation, because he does and there's a lot of, like this Vivitrol thing. There are tons of grants for that stuff in probation. They come out every year, and we don't.
He has gone after some of it.
Well, he has, but I mean, even if you sit down and talk with him, it's like like, hey, Carl, they have this grant for $150,000 for this, we should do it. He goes, are you gonna write it? Like, you know, because he's like, I'm done.
Well, isn't part of the problem though with grants is what strings are attached? What-
Well, sometimes, I mean, most of it is the reporting of information. That's the biggest problem is the writing the grants the easy part. It's most of them, like the probation ones, you have to have a program, you have to have like a proposal for the program, then you have to have data 2 years afterwards showing what you did and how you did it, and whoever does the grant writing has to forward that information. And that's a big commitment, because then you gotta follow up with John Collins and the court administration and everybody to gather the data for it. It's a real pain.
Okay, anything else? We're after 1 o'clock. According to that. If there's nothing else,
Anything to add to the work session?
the commissioners meeting.
Yes.